Your show's rubbish.
Hello, welcome to the Trout Spinners. Now, this is an episode that is different from usual. We're going to go through feedback from you. We've had quite a lot of feedback, so we're going to do a separate show for it. And this is that show. I am going for myself, and with me is my co-host, Mr. Miles Purnell, or MP as he likes to call himself.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, so this show, the last show we did was a Claire episode. It was episode 17 of the XFM show. Please do listen to that and see what you think. But this is more kind of, I mean, Mars has spent a lot. I appreciate it. Mars is good at this. He's gathered a lot of feedback because Mars is on social media and I'm not. And so we're going to go through it. But I think there was because it's you can talk more about this, Mars. But you were saying it's Mental Health Week, is it? And this has spurred you on to ask a question of the audience.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get in touch with us on a week-by-week basis, but also I'm fully aware that, you know, for many people, the XFM shows provide a lot of respite, a lot of support for any sort of mental health issues that they're going through. You know, this is something that is a personal touchstone for me, and I know yourself, Gary, as someone
for both of us, absolutely.
You know, we've both obviously gone through our own sort of struggles with mental health, and I also think particularly at this time, whilst we are going through lockdown, and by no means to capitalise on it, because I know I don't want it to feel like a sort of, you know, we're just doing it out of obligation. No, we genuinely are passionate about this, and it's something I'm eager to talk about with Gary and to talk about your feedback.
Yeah, and obviously we started doing this podcast because of the love that other people have. We realised how much love there was for these XFM shows that we love as well. But it's more than that, because they're more than people more than love them. They almost need them, and they've used them in ways that has kind of kept them going through difficult periods. And that's kind of what we realised. So that's why I think, and by no means am I saying our podcast is like, it's doing okay. It's doing pretty well. We'd like more listeners, but, you know, who wouldn't? So, but we feel the listeners we do have are quite dedicated. And the reason for that is not necessarily because of us. In fact, it's not because of us at all. But it's because of the closeness that they feel to the XFM shows. And that's something that Mars and I, as Mars said, we both got through difficult times using the podcast. So yeah, so we've got Mars then put out on Reddit or on
Twitter.
You say what you did. I can't.
So yeah, I basically put a call out on Twitter asking for your stories, which we could then read out on air. And to start us off, this is from Breachy Rocket, and she said, "Is it too lame to say that when I was alone and felt homesick at university, they were a real friend to me?"
No, that's great. Yeah, I can really relate. So who was that?
Breachy Rocket.
Breachy Rocket. You are not alone in having experienced that, I'm sure.
This is from Sarah, who's a new listener, actually. "Suffering with extreme anxiety and regular insomnia, I have played the XFM shows for the last 8 years. I can't sleep without Carl's lovely drone in the background." A lot of people I know, and you know, people I sort of see on like various groups and Reddit threads, and yeah, a lot of people do use the shows as kind of a remedy for sort of going to sleep.
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
Just, I find that so. I need complete silence when I go to sleep. But I know a lot of people love that sort of background, sort of haze, that sort of background noise.
It's very comforting to have a voice. For whatever reason, like, I don't know, it just can't. I actually use. I know this sounds strange, but I use the TV show Pointless, which is a UK game show. So you probably haven't heard of it if you're in another country. But it's just having that voice. It's kind of like Have you heard of ASMR?
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, and you get used to kind of having a voice there, and it's just nice, and it's kind of like, it just feels kind of comforting. But there are certain people who must turn on I know people who must turn on a vacuum cleaner to sleep, and they leave it on all night because they need that noise. They can't sleep without a vacuum. So it's not a strange thing. But yeah, I certainly share that, Sarah. I use them when I can't sleep, and use them to get to sleep. And what's interesting, I don't know if any other listeners have experienced this, but is if you do that, sometimes what they're talking about weaves itself into the narrative of your dream. So you start dreaming like what they're saying is happening in your dream, and you're there, and it's just weird. But it's
So you ever dream about a little fella leaning on an apple?
leaning on an apple.
Leaning on an apple, Carl. Leaning on an apple. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you for getting in touch. This one is from Erin.
Oh, hi, Erin.
Erin. Gary says hello.
What is it, Erin? The Erin who listens.
Who we know.
Oh, hello, Erin.
Erin says, it's been a rock for me. It helps me to feel calm after a hard day, to quiet my mind when my thoughts are racing around uncontrollably, or just to make me smile and laugh. It's familiar and comforting, and it's a go-to for when I am not feeling good enough, anxious and / or lonely, which I think, that really, hammers home the reason why we're doing this podcast, because it shows, the power of but for me, a lot of these were particularly poignant because I'm a big fan of radio, of audio. I'm recently, a lot of my clients I work with, they're radio, and it's a particular cause, that I'm passionate about, a particular medium I'm passionate about.
Well, I'll just say that is something that's we both share that, because we both bonded first over audio in particular, and
I think it's a medium that a lot of TV or film, as much as I love both of those mediums, radio doesn't have that. And the fact that these radio shows that have stood the test of time, and they've proven this through dedicated listeners such as yourself, Aaron, people are still listening to them, these hours of content.
And it's different. If it's harder, and Carl says, I think the visual ruins radio, and Ricky's like, no. Carl's absolutely right. If these shows it would have been interesting to have seen webcam footage, a bit of webcam footage, but if they were all on the webcam, it's not as special. I don't know, I don't like the way radio shows these days are filmed, like Commode and Mayo, who I love, and they're great. But I'd rather just hear it, and there's something about it just being audio. But anyway, Erin, that's a great comment. Certainly, I can honestly say, not just saying this, but that's something I shared.
There's a lot to be said about that sort of familiarity, and also I knew the shows religiously. You can almost transcribe them in your head as you're listening to them, and you know what's coming up next. I think it's just nice to have that safe space where you can return to, and you can go, oh cool, it's okay, it's safe, good here.
Yeah, absolutely, it's a good point. It feels safe being it feels like, okay, I'm back with friends, even though we're not. It's that kind of feeling. And that is why we started this podcast, because we realized there's other people who've experienced this out there, and we wanted for them to not feel as alone. They feel alone, and then the show helps them, but then they might feel alone in the fact that the show helps them so much. But you're not alone, because many people experience this, including us too, and many listeners as well.
Quite right too. Lucan said, after a particularly stressful day, I like to chain a few episodes. I like the use of the word chain there. It reminds me of cigarettes. I find it really relaxing to immerse myself in the RSK bubble and forget the real world for a bit. And I think for a bit of escapism, that's what the shows offer. It's just it's pure. You might watch fucking Marvel films or something, but I'd much rather sit down and listen, plug my earphones in a dark room, listen to the meanderings of Ricky, Carl and Steve, and just forget where I am for 5 seconds, because that transformative ability that audio can have, I think it's really unparalleled, and I can't think of anything that comes close to that.
No, and it's not just because obviously we're saying audio in general does that, but this is a particularly special type of audio. And actually, every single place that I walk, I always listen. Very occasionally, I'll put on some music, but most of the time, I'm listening back to the podcast. And
Or Oasis.
or Oasis. If it's a song, it might be Oasis, might not. But no, listen, it's that thing where like I don't feel alone. I live alone, but I see people not in lockdown, but I see enough people to absolutely. In fact, I see too many. I'd rather see fewer people, real people, but I see enough people. But when I'm walking somewhere, I often feel lonely when I'm walking, just because you're on your own. You're doing a solitary walk somewhere. So it's so nice to have that audio on and just to listen back to that familiar Ricky, Carl and Steve, and I'm not as alone on my walk.
That's nice. I like that. This is from Mr. Dilkington, who's been in touch before.
Oh yeah.
I must say that reverting back to listening to the shows has helped me to take my mind off the stress of homeschooling my kids, and knowing that lots of people listen to the shows makes me feel less of a weirdo.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, that's a great comment. Yeah, exactly. Like that's why we wanted to do, and I'm not saying our podcast is responsible for other people knowing that other people listen to the show, but we wanted to bring
sounds like
people
that's what you're
together.
saying, mate.
We wanted to bring people together who think, oh, this is weird. Like I'm doing a weird thing here, but you're not. And Mars and I were very lucky because we actually met in real life, and we both happened to love the podcast, the XFM show. So we could kind of bond over that. But there's people who love it, but no one else they know physically in their life knows it. So, you know, that's why we want to do this podcast. And that's hopefully what we're kind of getting across.
And also, I can't imagine the stress of homeschooling your kids. Like I spoke to my sister recently who has 3 kids and is
But
doing...
her oldest isn't school ages?
one of them is, yeah. So, yeah, she's been kind of doing the whole BBC bite-size thing and, you know, trying to keep them engaged. I actually forwarded on... this is a great story, actually. If you want your kids, right, to read a bloody good story or a bloody good meal, Flat Stanley and anything by Roald Dahl. I know Taika Waititi is doing a live read of James and the Giant Peach online, and I really recommend that. If you've got young kids, if you've got anyone and you want to introduce them to the world of like audiobooks or just great literature generally, then definitely check.
Roald Dahl is classic.
Yeah, just classic dark stories as well. Roald Dahl, you forget that.
Do you know what happens? I didn't know this until quite recently. Roald Dahl's daughter.
She's a cook.
No, that's Sophie Dahl. Sorry, but there's another daughter. She caught a cold, and she was in bed and things, and she was getting worse and worse, and she died. And I don't want to get too much, but she died. And a lot of his work is almost to her, and it is quite dark because of the dark experience that he went through. So his daughter just died of the flu.
I didn't know that.
This was obviously years and years and years ago, but yeah, of course. I mean, Roald Dahl's classic. I remember being read Roald Dahl stories by my teacher in primary school, James and the Giant Peach, classic. But and there's something about Roald Dahl, being read Roald Dahl or reading it, that's better than watching the films they've made of it or the cartoon.
Yeah.
You've got it all in your head, and it's that thing of audio. You're imagining what Ricky, Carl and Steve are doing. Roald Dahl, if you're reading it, you're creating images in your head. Whereas
do you know something I've really wanted to do, Gary? Is I've really wanted to do like sort of an adult child like audio book or some sort of podcast or something that kids can learn about the difficult truths of life, but in a really fun way. Because I think, you know, I kind of get the impression that kids are gonna like not be that interested in audio when everything's all about what you see.
Well, particularly in these days, I think, yeah, kids growing up, it's so visual because, you know, we've all got one of these. We've all got screens, you know, whereas growing up, we didn't have that. And it's not to get a generational thing of nostalgia, but it just is that way. So, yeah, anyway, good luck with that podcast. I'm not sure. I think you can do that on your own. Mars actually used to be a teacher a little bit.
That's true.
Time. And Mars did a session on Karl Marx.
And
I wish I was in that session.
My thoughts are with teachers now who are thinking about going back to work. This is from Brad Fowler.
They're being forced. It's bad. Anyway, go on.
This is from Brad Fowler, and he's a new listener. And he said, "Great show. Good to hear others talking about the shows, as I don't know anyone who likes them. Cheers."
Again, great. Like all these comments are saying similar things. That's what's his name?
Brad Fowler.
Brad Fowler. It sounds like a character from EastEnders. But
Mark, yeah, he's in relation to Mark Fowler.
Sonia.
That's for anyone that's over fucking.
And in England as well, which is hardly anyone in our audience. But yeah, good comment, Brad. I like it.
Welcome to the club, Brad. This is from Xanthia Webb, and she is a wine scientist.
What?
I know. A fucking wine scientist.
What's her name?
Xanthia?
Xanthia, if you want to just
unusual name.
Xanthia, if you just want to send in your phone number and contact details, and I'll be in touch with you. Please. It's my dream.
Gary loves wine. She's married, but don't worry about it.
I'm only joking, but I do love wine, yeah. Anyway,
can you imagine what it is to be like a wine scientist?
Yeah, it's probably just like being any other scientist. She obviously doesn't drink it at work, you know. She just studies the acidity and things like that of the compositions of grapes.
I've never had. I would love to go wine taste. I've never done wine. Maybe we should go wine tasting.
Yeah, well, what's that thing? I probably can't go, but there was a thing you wanted to go to like some rural village in France to do a writer's retreat.
No, that was a writer's retreat.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm just saying we could probably find a vineyard there because that's where they, you know, that would be the perfect place to do wine tasting. But I've never done wine tasting before. I taste it a lot, but swallow.
But what a lovely job to have. So Xanthia Webb said, "Just listen to the first episode, and I got all the questions of the quiz correct. But I am a self-confessed super fan of the XFM shows, so you put Gary to shame."
Well, Xanthia, next week we're doing episode 18 of season 2, and Xanthia's going to come in and sit in with Miles and because I think you deserve it, because I didn't get those questions. Miles put me on the spot there because I was kind of like, I don't know, I haven't listened as much to season 1, but it made it look like I didn't know much about the show. But I promise you I do. But Xanthia, well done actually for getting all those.
Also, can I just say, in your defence, these people that say, you got them wrong, and it's really hard to remember loads of stuff, and also when you've got loads of other interests and also, going on your life, how the hell can you possibly know? I wouldn't have even fared that well in them. No, there's a lot of things there's a lot of things I know aside from that, you know.
Yeah, I know you know. Yeah, well, we take that as read. You know other things, but it was the first podcast we were doing. We were both quite nervous, so I probably wasn't on my game there. But well done for getting those questions. I mean, you must be a super fan. But yeah, again, thanks for your comments, and that's great because Miles and I often talk about this. We feel we've improved as the shows have gone on. Not saying we're great, not saying we're even good, but we've improved, probably from a low point. But I'm always pleased when someone listens to episode 1 and they don't immediately turn off. I often think, oh, you listen to episode 1, you just think it's shit. But I'm glad that that Xanthia listened to episode 1 and then got in touch with us. So
thank you, Xanthia. Please continue to listen, and I hope you enjoy the latter podcasts. One final one before we move on to the Trout Spinners Library. This is from Lottie, actually. And Lottie says, I just discovered your podcast. I love it a lot. I listen to the XFM shows while I work out, or it just allows me to switch off and have some me time. I love the nostalgia of it all as well.
Great comment. Yeah, thank you,
Lottie.
No, good name. I like that name. Yeah, it allows you to switch off. When you're working out, it's a great time to listen. And thank you very much.
Have you ever worked out?
I work out a lot. No, I go into the gym, but some people put on high intensity music, high beats, quick beats, so they can sort of work out to that. But I much prefer the podcast. So Yeah, I'm with you there, Lottie, and thank you for discovering the shows and not thinking they're immediately absolute shit.
I do actually want to. Like her last point does it does strike a particular nerve, because this is a subject that's of particular fascination for me, is nostalgia, and how we view like nostalgia. And obviously I'm no fucking scientist or pseudo sociologist or something, but how do you what is your opinion, Gary, on like nostalgia? I know obviously a lot of people nowadays, obviously it's all about like resurging old things like 80s, 90s. A lot of people have like 90s parties or whatever.
Yeah, a lot of bands have made comebacks, and it's that wasn't the sort of thing that bands used to do to make comebacks. I think there's a big place for nostalgia. I think people do look fondly on a certain period, and we often talk about this. We often say, like, Mars and I both think that the music today, like, all right, you might prefer it, but it's not as profound as it used to be. Now, when we say that, I sort of self-reflect on that and think to myself, well, actually, there probably is music that's just as big as Oasis was then, or just it means as much to people as that meant to me. And it's
Stormzy.
it's a nostalgic kind of
Prism.
nostalgia. Oh,
Thanks very much.
that's the most intelligent thing you've ever said. No, but it's nostalgia's great, but it also is something that clouds your people's judgment, including my own, I think. So it clouds judgment, but we do crave for things that were in the past. Like I got like I like playing sort of Mario games from 1989. That's kind of that brings a lot of nostalgia back. And actually, I watched this YouTube channel, and he's called the Angry Video Game Nerd. Some listeners might have listened to him, but what he does basically, kind of, they go back and nostalgically just play through games, and they just play through games that I remember from my childhood, and I love it. And they've got huge audiences, so nostalgia is a huge thing. It's a very real thing, but it kind of clouds people's judgment about the present. I think you look down on the present because you fondly crave for something that you used to have.
It makes you think like what people are going to think of like now in the future. Like I just can't imagine anyone feeling nostalgic for 2020 or 20. Oh, I don't know. I've got very like fond memories of early 2010, like the indie wave, Libertines and Block Party and all that, because that was my time. That was my young time. But I'm still young.
I knew that was coming. He can't accept his advancing age, but you are still young. I'm still youngish, but
and we'll continue to do this podcast until one of us dies. Gary will probably die before me.
Yeah, I can absolutely I will. So, if FLJS has got anything to do with it, but I think that we're often, unless you go through a really bad period, which some people do in those formative years. I think formative years are so important, and people think formative years are when you're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. But no, formative years goes right into the mid-20s, I think, and there's something about you're forming your opinions amongst cultural signifiers, so cultural things, music, TV shows. Like, we won't be as nostalgic for our 30s probably as we were in our 40s as we are now about our 20s, because they're formative years, they're early years. So but anyway, it's an interesting point, but
it's interesting because it's like I think you should be open-minded whatever age you are, and you should be like open to any kind of experiences, TV shows or whatever. I obviously am really nostalgic for TV shows, particularly like children's TV shows. I've got young nephews and nieces, and you go, oh, it's no Tots TV, or it's no Rosie and Jim. You go, no, but they have Teletubbies, and
well, no, they don't. Teletubbies is like
no, but Teletubbies is like, well, you know what I mean, don't you?
No, but they have their stuff, but Yeah, it's because they're ultra formative years. So yeah, Rosie and even you just saying Rosie and Jim just brings a smile to my face. Yes, my face, a
They were
smile.
the first
I know.
interracial puppet couple.
Okay, were they?
I don't know if that's true, but it looked like that
I
when I'm
didn't.
looking.
Anyway, good on them. But yeah, no, I'm serious. Like if they portrayed that in the early '90s, I think that's quite brave of them, and but yeah, it's that thing of nostalgia. But it kind of, as you said there, you look disparagingly upon your nephew and niece's children's shows that they watch
Yeah.
now. But actually, that's nostalgia clouding your memory. Now, it might be the case that some TV is shit, but I'm sure some TV we watched is shit. Like I watched growing up Men Behaving Badly and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah,
Like,
as aged badly, that show.
Now when I watch back, it's like it's not as funny at all as I remember it. It's all right, but I look fondly, nostalgically on it because we used to watch it growing up, and the Fast Show, which does still
Yeah.
hold up, we both watched growing up. So anyway, that's that. So shall we? So yeah, I think I'm really pleased we were debating how to do this, but we eventually decided we'd do a slightly shorter episode of the main show. And because we had so much feedback, and thank you all for your feedback, really appreciate it, we decided to do a separate show. So I hope it's worked. You know, let us know if this is the sort of thing you'd like to see in the future, like if you'd like the show being broken up like this. But yeah,
and also big strength to anyone who is suffering from any kind of mental health issues.
Absolutely.
And I hope these shows offer you any kind of respite, any kind of support. And please do get in touch with us at Trout_D on Twitter or Trout dot D at gmail.com. There we go.
Say .e.
.e. There we go. Got through it in the end.
So the last thing we're going to do now, which we always do, is a feature that I really enjoy. No, I'm always kind of thinking on my feet with this one because I always forget about it. But Miles likes to do, and I think it's a good idea to kind of put songs that mean something to us or that are interesting. Or I often pick silly songs, like I picked Mariah Carey's. I know I picked All I Want for Christmas Is You, like in May.
I love that song.
No, I know it's a great song, but I'm saying I picked it in May, so I'm not taking this as seriously. So, but yeah, we pick a song each to put in the library that goes online and
on Spotify, and there's a link in the description. It's called the D Trout Spinners Library.
Absolutely. So, Miles, what's your song?
So I'm actually gonna choose "Wanna Be" by the Spice Girls.
Great.
I don't know why.
I love it. Brilliant.
But I'm a massive. I don't know for whatever reason, but the Spice Girls have been in my head, and I can't get them out of my head. And I think it's a massive feel-good tune at the moment. And "Wannabes," I could have put in any kind of Spice Girls song, but I'm going to put in one, and it's either going to be that.
People look down on the Spice Girls. Maybe it's a nostalgia thing because I was just I was about 13 when "Wannabe" came out, 13 or 14, and you sort of laugh at it now. Oh, the Spice Girls, yeah. They're great stomping pop songs, and I had a poster of the Spice Girls in my bedroom, so I'm all in with "Wannabe."
I remember going to the newsagents, and my grandma and granddad used to pick me up from school, and we'd go to the newsagents, and you could buy the photo album of the Spice Girls, and you could like pick them out, and they were like developed photos of all the Spice Girls on their shenanigans. No, not at all.
Yeah.
No, they're like it's like Pokemon. I'm surprised you hadn't heard of this. It was like Pokemon cards, but they were like developed photos of the Spice Girls on their tour and stuff. It was wicked. They should bring that back.
Well, that's the thing. Now, did you remember like I don't want to get too back into
is this a Peter Kay routine? You can go, who remembers?
No, but there used to when I was growing up, like there was something basically fan clubs, and you could be a member and you wrote off, maybe sent some money or maybe didn't. You became a fan, you got a little thing through the post each. But now there's no need for stuff like that. There's no need for photos. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with you. It would be good. I would would support that if that came back. But people are so used to just, you could get any picture of the Spice Girls you want on your phone in seconds, and it's. I think there's less need for stuff like that, and that's a shame. That's a shame. But anyway, that's your song. Won't get too much into that.
Yeah.
So my song is going to be a song. I played it when my grandpa died on air when we were doing our radio show, and it's Whatever by Oasis. And I'll just let you listen to the lyrics of that. Not you, Miles, but if you listen to the lyrics of that, you can maybe see why I picked it, and that means a lot to me. So I've really picked one that means a lot to me this time.
I remember when you played that, and quite right too. So this has been the Trout Spinners Extra Show. It is Mental Health Awareness Week. Please do look after yourselves and each other, and keep listening to the shows. Keep listening to the podcast. Get in touch with us.
Our ones or XFM?
Doesn't matter. Preferably our ones.
Preferably our ones.
It's good for the figures. Good for the advertising.
Miles sends me the figures each week, so he's like, so no, look, we're not that bothered about the figures, but of course it's nice. But of course, keep listening to the XFM ones mainly. They're the ones you love, but hopefully this podcast will have a place in some people's affections, at least a few, and that to me makes it all worth it.
And coming up, I think we're gonna be doing more Dutch or Otherwise, maybe, and we'll do episode 18. This is Carl's back, isn't he? Carl's
back, and it's their Christmas show.
It's a Christmas show.
I think it's their Christmas show. It's the one before Christmas.
Christmas spectacular. How about that? Look after yourselves, everyone, guys. This has been a Trout Spinners. Miles and Gary.
See you later.
Bye-bye.